this room. But also I want to thank the team, Street Children, or Street Child rather, sorry, for the presentation. For me, as we were presenting the package in the engagement kit, I think I was impressed. Because ideally, if you look at what the project wants to see happen in class, is that there is a very interactive and participatory engagement between the teacher and the learners in class, despite challenges, like my brother here has just mentioned. And this is the narrative we are all in this room wanting or fighting to change. For me, 75 schools participating in this dissemination data collection. And so what we saw there are also a representation is a starting point, in a manner that even if the class is full and you're observing, but you are reaping a bit of the benefits of what you invested. For me, that is encouraging, and it points us towards a direction where we should now look at how or what else should we do collaboratively to combat challenge. Efficiency ratios, not just teacher-learner ratio. We have the sitting facilities which impact literacy and numeracy in terms of children's concentration, improvement in reading and writing, and their abilities to be able to comprehend certain concepts. How do we navigate that? We have a key barrier in refugees hosting districts, language. As much as we want to see a very interactive class, engaging, learners exploring, fluent in 2 or 3 at worst, but also we still have the 40 minutes we're working with. I was speaking to a teacher yesterday, a lower primary school teacher, in a Ringajobi primary school, in a Uanaka primary school, in a Ariwa 1. And they were from 3 different districts. And I was exploring what are the challenges that you face while administering lessons with P1 to P3. And they told us, Madam, the instruction is supposed to be done in the local language as per the thematic curriculum, but we have a variety of languages. And one of the teachers told me, I am only fluent in Aringa, but I have 5 different, or more than 5 different major languages. So I concentrate to deliver the instruction in Aringa, while when I am giving the children exercise or notes, I do it in English. And for me, my major challenge as a teacher is I find the children lost in the middle of harmonizing my explanation during instruction and now transitioning to the reading of what I am putting in the chalkboard or counting. And for us, that is a reality on the ground that we need to deal with as people who are now seated in this room and looking at this.
Maybe some of the urban schools may be a little better, or maybe much better. But most of our schools, that is the practice. And we are saying, there was somebody who said, for whom are these tools? Point of understanding is also very important. When you look at the questions there, do the findings reflect the current situation in classrooms or schools? If you have been supervising our teachers, you should be able to objectively answer that question. And I think the DIS...
This one is talking about instructional, the other one is talking about socioeconomic competence development. But the last one, which was not catered for, in the two is the aspect of the literacy and numeration and the literacy and numeracy levels of the learners, which if you look carefully in all these tools will not reflect so much. And I think that's the basic issue. Because we are looking at the aspect of quality. Now, how do you measure quality when a child cannot read and write? And I think one of the issues that we can take here is there's a need to explore. Because I expected to see the level of competence in this reading, and then also the aspect of the arithmetic. There is some disparity in assessment and then the teaching. We just needed to bring it to attention of. And if you see critical learning, take a record from 2023 to last year, the performance has dropped in a way that it has affected that move. But as your level is trying to transit into the new curriculum, NCBC content is still talking about the old curriculum. And that's why there is some confusion in schools. Teachers are trying to teach using the old, but now the assessment is where competent based. I think as a ministry, we need to harmonize that and see it's a silent issue. That's why you see now the number of fours are declining. Because now, what goes there into 11, they are now based on high order thinking. Because they expected the learner to go beyond the knowledge and reflect. And I think as a ministry, that's something you need to invest yourself in. I'm talking here right now as a parent, but also a concerned teacher. Thank you. Yes, for us as teachers, it's useful. But of course, for us to be able to implement this, there is a need to address the teachers' welfare issues, which I think is a very big concern. And where you see that aspect of not observe is getting the highest one percentage. And that's the reason teachers are not happy. Because now if we don't take this into consideration, because right now where we are, we're in the schools, but mentally we're absent, and that's the reality. So we need to address the teacher welfare issues. We need to address the aspect of the mental health and support services for learners, even parents, teachers, so that we're able to reduce on the issues of not being, the aspects not being observed. So the next time when we come here, the teacher elements surface clearly, because once they are happy, we feel to participate and also make the learners happy. Thank you.
Because I believe a trained teacher, much as we also have gaps in our schools, may at least have something better than this in terms of the pedagogy they use in classes. And my other concern is also on the balancing of the choice of the observation. For us to generalize this finding as what we have in the Ugandan setting, it would have been prudent for us to have maybe also observe the schools in other areas other than the refugee settlement, so that it gives us a clear picture. Because this one is giving us a generalization of what the learning process in Uganda looks like. So I don't know if there will be maybe opportunity for that again, but what I saw here is that they are closing. So with this, if these teachers are trained, and this is the picture of the teaching learning process in our schools, then I think we need to take an intervention of retooling these teachers time and again. We are working on the reviewed curriculum, which is in the process. And most of this pedagogy, we have really tried as much as possible to incorporate them in the competency-based curriculum. where the learner is at the center. But despite that, I think there will be need to retool these teachers often time. For this presentation and I have a few observations to make. I would like to appreciate the team that has been said, and I want to add my voice to a few. Some speakers talked about the teaching done in the local language, which we really believe is a challenge. But I feel we have not really conceptualized the issue of the language policy, because much as people have interpreted it as using the local language to teach, but the emphasis is the familiar language of the area. And now when we look at the situation or the context where data was collected, the focus was on the refugee settlements. And definitely we have so many languages there. So if you use the language of that area, or maybe the local language, definitely many learners would miss. So the language policy emphasizes on the familiar language. Now in a situation where you find learners coming from diverse ethnic community, what would be the most appropriate? And that is what you find that in most urban settings, they are implementing that. They have to use English or Kiswahili. Now secondly, I would like to maybe pose a question, because I had some questions as I was following this, the findings which were presented. I wonder whether maybe one of the factors they considered during data collection or during the observation was teachers' qualification. Because what I know is that in most, these are
district inspectors who attended training last week, maybe you'll be able to add and to validate my statement. But I think in general, when they first looked at the tool, they said, these things are they're too difficult, the expectations, we won't see these things, you know? It's understand that this study was just within the refugee settlement communities in Uganda, and that it is not a nationally representative sample. And this was just because as part of the project, you know, Street Child was the organization, and those are the areas in which they work. But it does give us an idea, at least in some section of the country, what is happening. And as the Assistant Commissioner said, that he feels, and others have said, that they feel it is not so different than what is happening generally in the country. Again, from a research and data perspective, we cannot say definitively that this is the case. But anecdotally, others are speaking up and saying that they have observed that it may be similar. So it's really just giving us a starting point for discussion, right? It's true that many of them may not be formally trained, but it is also true in research that the teacher qualifications or level of education generally have very little associations with how well learners learn. And that's very consistent in education studies. Of course, you know, we find in general trends sometimes if you are doing studies in many refugee communities and just education levels are generally low, where you have you know, teachers or caregivers who have only had maybe a primary education or no formal education at all. I'm not saying that that's not relevant, but just that overall, only focusing on, you know, teacher certification or qualification, it doesn't make you a good teacher. Just like you may have the most brilliant minds in certain subject areas that have, you know, written books and such things, but it doesn't make them good professors, you know? And so it is a little bit more nuanced than that. I don't want us to say that, you know, tool can capture everything that we're talking about. A lot of what members in this community are talking about have to do with context. And we have by no means said that this tool is covering the context. of teachers' lives, you know, of the school environment or the children's home environment. What we are focused on are teaching practices.
The local language of the area more quickly, even than the natives. Actually, in those classes, you find the Dinka, the Nweri, leading and very fluent within a very short time. So language should not be used as what? As an excuse. And for me, I'm a very strong advocate. The local language of the area, make them all fallen and they will catch up, and within a very short time. And then we had a lot of negatives. I want to say in education, even if you had one positive on an activity, it's very significant.
It's there.
So those results may indicate more negative, but those positives are very, very, very significant in terms of attainment, because we are talking about one individual achieving. And
Now the children have got the force. So parents are encouraging this practice, and most of us are part of the game. But I think, hopefully, working with UNEP, we shall be able to eradicate that practice. The primary curriculum is being reviewed. It is not yet it is not yet in implementation. Actually, will be piloted. The reviewed curriculum, P1 to P3, will be piloted next year. And the rollout to the rest of the country will be done in the subsequent year, that is 2028. So as of now, we do not have a new curriculum for primary. We are still reviewing the primary curriculum, and the emphasis is to make it competence-based, like the lower secondary curriculum, and maybe subsequently the upper secondary curriculum. So let's keep waiting, but we shall also be consulted in the process. I said we may keep on adding and adding, but maybe not satisfy you. But I think that is at least the level we can try. I see a lot of movement, probably the large numbers, but I think that did not largely contribute to the results we see. Because when a teacher is in class, excited and delivering a lesson, I think the issue of welfare is not on the face of the teacher. So that the teacher does not enable the learners to, create an environment where learners explore. Because when you look at the assessment that was done, some of the videos we saw did not show that the teacher was miserable because of poor motivation. It is true, these are some of the challenges our teachers experience. But I think the critical thing here is we have emphasized, we have not emphasized some of the critical practices.
Positive. For me, these results actually meant for the Curriculum Development Center. How is our curriculum? What do we need to do differently to enable the teacher to be more engaged in the curriculum? One. Two, it also speaks to I'm happy that some of the sisters they are here. The teacher professional development.
Help learners to engage meaningfully in their learning. And when they were presenting the question, which can be just from recall, and that is a certain percentage, and exams test application. If the papers, I'm talking of the PLE papers maybe, if they are set very well, they should have a balance of the three. But if they are not well balanced, which is not normally the case, they should be able to address those areas well. Last year, I think UNEP has been progressively trying to address the issue, the question of cramming, drilling children for exams. And last year, particularly in SST, the performance was quite poor. And the reason is that the way it was set did not require the usual recall, cramming. Because while the ministry put a ban on the commercialized tests, that is what the schools normally use to prepare learners for PLE from day one up to PLE time. While there is a ban on commercialized tests, the schools have continued to buy tests for their children. It is teachers who are supposed to prepare test items based on what they have covered to the learners. But because of pressure of PLE, the schools buy papers which are set from different places. Now, UNEP is going around that, and that's why my sister here is saying, like we all had some Kampala schools were saying, no, Kampala was marked differently. But it is because the usual way schools are used to preparing their children, they went around it, and the children were not able to pass well. So gradually, actually the executive director was saying, this is just the beginning. If we are able to continue in that direction, setting papers which require learners to demonstrate ability to apply what they have learned, then the schools will run away from drilling children to pass exams. So, but you know, all of us are in this game. When a school gets in aggregate 4, all of us run there to take our children.
But for sharing the outcome of the research. To thank my team from the Ministry of Education and Sports for organizing this. To thank our sister from OPM, who is our boss, because they coordinate all sectors of government. And thank all of you for coming and for staying up this time. Together we can learn and make. We can make. We can make. Yes, so may God bless you as you go back to make a difference. Because it's us in the education system that God has given an opportunity to transform lives. And we transform lives when young people are able to learn. And looking at the age groups that you are dealing with, where you did the research, from 6 to 12, that's the real learning period. the computer slates of these children are still empty, and you can write your script there, and it will be written. So to hear some of these things that I've heard makes me a bit uncomfortable, because if our children are not learning the foundations, then their future becomes difficult. I'm sure that you all know that if a child fails to learn how to read in the early years, which is up to age 8, because ECD ends around 8, and that's about P3. If a child fails to learn to read in those years, this child will struggle through life, because you'll find it very hard to learn. Because learning is through reading, is through understanding issues, having a clear concept, working it through. But if you can't read, then you cannot study. I know of cases of young people on the street here, very intelligent young people. You talk to them, they are brilliant. And then you ask them, selling G-nuts on baskets and these small things. You ask them, which level did you reach? Then they tell you P5, and then I try to interrogate, especially if we are in a jam. Then I say, why? Why did you get out of school? The government provides UPE. Why didn't you finish at least P7? I say, learning became difficult. But to some, I have learned that they couldn't read. So they get, after P3, they get to P4, the teacher is teaching, they understand what she's saying, they can copy what he or she has written on the chalkboard, but cannot read it. So when you give them an assessment, they cannot give you the answers, although if you talk to them, they will give you the answers. So this child knows he or she is bright, but on his report or her report form, there is 10%, very poor, there is all this. So the child gets in P5, they are about 11, 12, and they think I'm wasting time here. So it's extremely critical that we teach these children the foundational skills. And the foundational skills are the literacy skills and numeracy skills. And learning these skills is meant to be an exciting experience. It's not meant to be me lecturing to them. It's meant to be them discovering it. You just tell them, do you see those cows out there? Yes. How many are they? They will count them. Amazing. How many goats do you take care of in the evening? They will tell you how many their goats are. And so, if what we are trying to help them learn is contextualized, and that was the basis of the thematic curriculum, that you teach the whole child. You teach the whole child from the environment where they live. So they enjoy what they are doing because they see it, they know it, they can contribute to their own learning. So I'm glad that this report is out and the number of indicators that were being used. And this is what we expect every teacher to be doing. I'm a teacher by profession, I'm a high school teacher. Because I did a Bachelor of Science with a concurrent diploma, that's what was available then at Makerere. But in our diploma bit of the learning to teach, what you now call foundations in the teaching processes, one thing came out very, very clear, that for effective teaching, which results into effective learning, then you are looking at developing the whole child, the whole person. And we learned them and wrote them in our books and maybe produced it in an exam. But as I started working and teaching, I could now see it. You cannot say you have quality education in any school unless the child is holistically taught. You are looking at teaching the mind, teaching this child to think critically, to solve problems, These children you are talking about from the rural places, they walk long distances, they get home and there is no food and they know what to do. They are very good at problem solving. But when we pick those skills of problem solving and apply them in the learning process. So we learned that we needed to do the cognitive domain development. How many of you did that? Learned that to be a teacher, you should have the cognitive domain. How many of you are teachers? Put your hands up. To help the child to develop their mind, to learn to think, to learn to reason, to ask questions, developing the mental bit of it, the cognitive domain. But you are also taught that it's not just enough to use the head, that you need to teach a child to be a human being. And that's why in preschool, children learn all these simple things. How to relate with others, how to share, how to sit on potty for now the current things which are potty. You know, all these things. What are you teaching the child? You are touching that child. You are saying, when you do wrong, say sorry. You are teaching this child to be a human being. And that is the affective domain. Making you a real human being. And of course the third one was the psychomotor domain. How do you translate what you have in your head into something tangible? And that is why we included CAPES in the curriculum, that children can now think, well, we learned this in geography, that there are some mountains and the valleys, so he comes up now with a sand heap and builds a mountain, and then there are valleys, and pours water in on it, and he sees that some of the sand has been washed off, and that is erosion. And then he says, how do I stop this? And then he thinks, oh, they taught us something like terraces. So what does that one look like? So, learning becomes real learning when it is holistically handled. It's not about completing the syllabus. And I want to request that those of us who are here, who have been struggling, they call it covering. Going to cover the syllabus. From today's engagement, go back and ask yourself, is learning happening? Is learning happening? I had my book open, now I've covered it. Can you see what is on the page which I had opened? Why? So, when you teach and strive to cover the syllabus, then your children never access the learning. They never access the learning. You have put a tick on, oh, my science is finished, oh, my maths, but you have not taught. Because there is no teaching if learning is not happening. And when you struggle to cover the syllabus, you cover it so well so that there is no learning happening. Some of you must have seen it in the media earlier this year, when we released PLE. There was a lot of outcry. Why are our children not getting 4? Why are they not getting 5? UNEP is favoring the village people against us. And a few whom I was able to talk with, I asked them, what time do your children go to sleep? Because they are trying to cover the syllabus by doing so much homework. Homework that is not even related to what the child has done that day, what the child has done that week. That is wasted. What time do they leave home? By 4, because they want to take them to the schools with names where 4s are manufactured. So a child who has not had enough sleep, he can't learn. Take time to Google, because I know we all have now smartphones. Google the effects of inadequate sleep. So if our children are not sleeping, and then they are not learning, they are covering the syllabus. And they cover it so well that by P6 they have finished it. And then they start now rehearsing. When you ask a child anything outside the rehearsal, this child cannot answer. So I said, let's just settle and know that you are paying millions for nothing. Your child is not learning. So, I'm so glad you had the outcome of the research. I'm so glad the bosses are here, the chair. Hit ourselves at the chest and say, we can cause our children to learn. Ugandans are very brilliant, extremely. They eat good food, natural, from our gardens. They have a lot of fruits everywhere. They sleep because we have 12 hours of dark and 12 hours of light. We are not like countries where winter, you have 14 hours of dark and then a few hours of, no. We have everything good God has given us, fresh water, everything. So Ugandans are extremely brilliant. No child should fail to progress. So we the teachers, can we get back and say to ourselves, let me now teach. I'll finish with an experience. I went to Japan in 2010 as part of the Sesemat project that was here. Our philosophy is one task, one lesson. One. So we were 13 from 7 countries of Africa. I was the only one from Uganda and the only lady. The others were gentlemen and they were cute too. So we all looked at each other. And the professor thought, what's happening here? So he said, any problem? One of us, the men, put up his hand and said, Professor, if we do one task, one lesson, when shall we ever complete the syllabus? Then he also blushed now. And he looked at us and he said, complete the syllabus? We said, yes. He said, why do you teach? Do you teach to learn? Do you teach for children to learn? Or you teach for them, you teach to finish the syllabus? It left a mark in my heart. 2010, we'll be slaves in our own country. So, we have an opportunity to influence generations through teaching. And this report is a very good report. We can even pick, those of you who are teachers, you can pick and use some of these questions that were asked to teachers in your own teaching. I did a quick peruse as they were giving the briefs. We may not have big monies for CPDs, but we can have school-based CPDs. We can have cluster-based CPDs. We still have the CCT system working. So definitely the outcomes should be implemented. So when you get a teacher who is also a preacher to speak,
who has a child in a refugee settlement, who lives on handouts, how can government help such a parent to agree with me? But that government is doing their best. The office of the Prime Minister has opened doors. We are doing our best. And even the partners are doing their best. And this shows how collective education adventure is. And with this gesture of having collective responsibility, collective accountability, collective empathy, I know we shall go a long way to make the children of Uganda who reside in host communities and those who come, our brothers, to join us as refugees, to have a meaningful life. Because remember, education is the only worthful thing that we can give such children. We guess in implementation, we also do guess in evaluation. And therefore, whatever we do is termed as a guess, even in output and impact. And when the street child comes out today to show us how they have revolved to help this tagged child, the street child, to do learning and really become a useful citizen of this country, we thank them very much. And let the others emulate, including our ministries, departments, and agencies. They have been into a laboratory. They have made experiments. They have seen how the teachers interact with the children. They have told us how the children have responded. They have envisaged how these children have expressed their fears and confusion. And I think they are on the right course. They have talked about today, have been testified that, but the people who were involved have told us that they have the capacity, the tool is tested, it was refined, and it can produce data that can help Uganda to pull out children in those capacities so that they can learn. The mind of the teachers in those scenarios, as they have showed us, reflect whether we still have traditional teachers who have remained static or we have a teacher who appreciates advancement to evolve into a corporate teacher who works smart in ambiguous situations. They have resolved with us here today, Madam Permanent Secretary, that they need refreshment, capacity building, that they will use coping mechanisms, that they will use the champion teachers, that they will use resource persons to make the situation better, and that we all together will help them to make the parents involved so that they carry out their cardinal role of providing the welfare to the children. But
Chair, they told me your CCTs are here, and I was depriving them of that. CCTs before the administrative comes, can you please come?
Like I said, it's a research-based project, and implementation has been collecting data in the schools. So we recruited the different enumerators who we trained after thorough training, because to go and collect this data, one must have passed a percentage, which was 70%. So it's only those that pass up to a percentage of 70% that we sent to the field to collect the data, and then we were able to do the analysis of that data. Which I've realized that language, when children are taught in their local language, most times they grasp more because they are relating with things that they already know and things that they already understand. But as they grow up, but that mainly occurs for the lower primary. But as we move to higher grades, like with primary 6, primary 7, primary 5, they are able to cope up with the English language. So them incorporating both, teaching in both languages definitely supports their learning and enhances understanding in the classroom. Jacob Luanga, nkolera ekitongole bakita Street Child. Mu kitongole omwo nkolangwa omuntu akakasa nti ebintu bibaddewo okubeera ne evidence ku bintu ebikoleddwa nga tukuŋŋaanya ebikoleddwa. Tulina project gye tuimplementinga, project ya research era enoonyereza bunoonyereza ku ngeri abaana gye basomesebwamu mu kibiina. Omusomesa ayogera atya n'abaana nga bali mu kibiina, era abayamba atya okulowooza, abayamba atya okukolera awamu, abayamba atya okuyimirira bokka nga baddamu ebibuuzo okusinga nga ye agezaako kubalabirira engeri gye bakolamu ebintu. So the project research twamukola mu masomero 75, naye nga buli somero twafunayo classes 2 mu baana aba primary 1 mpaka P6. Era research ebadde focusinga ku baana ab'emyaka 6 mpaka emyaka 12. So kyetukoze kukuŋŋaanya data ono, data tumukuŋŋaanyiza okozesa tuulu gye bayita engage toolkit, naye nga tuulu eyo mu bumpimpi eyogera ku omwana engeri gy'analowoozaamu, omwana engeri gy'anaakolamu ebintu yekka, omwana engeri gye banaapeyalinga ne bakwatagana n'abaana abalala okukola ebintu, n'engeri omusomesa gy'ayambako okuyamba okulaba nga environment abaana gye basomeramu ebayamba okuba nga basobola okulowooza, basobola okukola ebintu nga bisaanidde okukola. So project yatandika mu 2023 era twazze olunaku olwaleero okusinziira ku data gwe twafuna, twazze wano olunaku olwaleero okumuwa abantu ba stakeholders abali mu kitongole kya education, era abasinga babirabye era ne tukitegeera nti mu masomero gaffe ebiseera ebisinga tusomesa abaana kuyita bibuuzo okusinga okubayamba okulowooza. So abaana babawa past paper n'okubasomesa obusomesa okulaba nti bafuna obuna mu UNEP naye nga tebabayambe mu ndowooza, okulowooza nti omwana newabeera ekintu teyakisomaako nga bakirese mu kibuuzo asobola okulowooza kubanga yayambibwa okuba nga asobola okulowooza. So kyetulese wano golden tulip kyekyo era kyekyatulese wano, ne twalese ba commissioner n'abantu abasinga abali mu kitongole ekyebyensoma era ne tubawa results ezo. Results ezisinga si nnungi kubanga practices ezimu ezikolebwa mu bibiina byaffe ezisinga ziri teacher centered, omusomesa yakulembera abaana ne balyoka bagoberera, naye ng'ate ensoma ennaku zino erina kubeera nga omusomesa ayambako abaana okubeera nga bategeera bye basoma. Omusomesa waba yekka yasomesa omwana nga followings abeera talowooza, teba owninga subject ebeera esomesebwa oba ekirala tekibayamba kulowooza nnyo kubanga ansa zonna omusomesa yazibaira azibawa naye singa omusomesa awa abaana omwaganya okusooka okufuna ebirowoozo byabwe n'azimbira ku birowoozo byabwe okubayamba okutereera then omwana oyo tasobola kwerabira kintu ekyo kyeyaweebwa. Nga bwe tuwadde data wano of course ebintu ebisinga byetaaga ssente ne funding. Tujjanga ffe ekitongole okugezaako okulaba nga oba tusobola okunoonya funding naye ne ministry nayo nga mweri muno results emaze okuzifuna era n'ekitegeera kyekiri mu masomero era bo kyendowooza kye basobola okukola kukwatagana n'ebitongole ebirala ebikola mu masomero n'ebikola mu masomero gonna okusobola okuyamba okulaba nga ssente zifunibwa okuyamba abasomesa kusomesa abasomesa kyekisinga obukulu kubasomesa ku ensomesa practice eya new curriculum kuba curriculum empya yafuluma naye nga curriculum empya egamba nti omwana yalina okukulembera mu kuyigirizibwa so singa ministry eyambako abasomesa ne basomesebwa wano naye nga n'abasomesa oluusi abamu balina kalica eyo eririkidde etayagala kukyuka olw'ekiri kye baalina edda era nga tusaba n'abasomesa nti singa nabo babeera open ne bakyuka then ekyo kiba kijja kutuyambako okukyusa ensoma yaffe yonna egwawo naye kale ba refugee camp bali eri beta okusinga tusinza gisanga eno ate mu masomero agaffe aga hostinga okusinga eya refugee camp kubanga ba refugee camp buli kaseera babeera ne bapartners abazigiriza abasomesa ababayigiriza buli kaseera okusinga eno ewaffe mu hosting district ate nga yo oluusi bayinza obutabya environment so enteekateeka results ezisinga obubi ziri mu abakyaza ffe ffennyini okusinga ba refugee camp.
Kireka abaana abali mu refugee camp kubanga abamu baba tebategeera
abamu refugee camp bo bayambibwa kubanga basomesebwa mu nnimi bbiri basomesa mu lulimi olwewaabwe n'oluzungu nga we bagenda bakakinga apo okulaba nga basobola okuyiga oluzungu kubanga era mu kiraasi ezo zonna ze twagendamu kyova laba twafuna abagenda ne bakolekitinga data nga bamanyi olulimi olwo kubanga ebibuuzo ebimu omusomesa bye yabuuza nga yabibuulizanga mu lulimi lw'abaana abaana era ne baddamu mu lulimi olwo era nga kimuyambako okutegeera kiki kyabadde abuuza so mu refugee camp ekibayambako kubanga bo basomesa mu nnimi bbiri babasomesa mu lwewaabwe ne basomesa ne mu luzungu so kibayambako okutegeera directed in any way to just pass exams but they are able to increase their thinking, they are able to do things on their own, the learning environment is good and basically learners are able to work together to ensure that they are able to achieve the intended outcomes. Basically that's about what the project intended and yes, we implemented this like I've said in the 75 schools and we had 47 who are refugees and 28 were host community schools.
Once again, if I may advise the government, I would ideally talk about a language policy, and that language policy should depend depending on every region. For example, in a refugee context, if the government could adhere to language for resilience, let every region have a language policy that would suit their areas of operation. If there is a familiar language that is commonly understood, then that kind of language should be adopted. Ideally, there is need for a language policy to address language issue in educational institutions, especially in refugee settlements. Hello everyone, I'm Stella Aloyo Oryang, the head teacher, Bright Future Nursery and Primary School in Palabeg Refugee Settlement, Namor District. I'm a teacher, but also a head teacher. In my own context, about language in schools. As we are all aware, teaching in the local language is to be adopted in every school in Uganda. When we talk about the local language, this is the familiar language of the community. A child thinks first in the local language. So to me, it is easy to connect knowledge from the local language and then English as a whole, so that there is consistency in the flow of knowledge. A learner should first be introduced at school through the local language, because at home we speak in the local language. So if we transfer the local language at home and at school, there would not be a disconnect learners would not take it like something strange, because at home they speak in the local language. It would be something also okay to find local language spoken at school. That is also part of culture, so that we don't run away from the language that we are familiar with. I would advise the usage of local language in the school across all learning areas, but also emphasizing English as a language and also as a subject. Pretty much the effect of language barrier is there. I want to agree to that fact, because in a refugee setting, these are learners from diverse backgrounds. Like in a particular school, you can have more than 10 languages being spoken. And you understand we use English as a familiar language in that context, because we would assume at least a few of the learners should understand. So in a situation where learners are not able to speak one common language, there is a gap in communication. Even the mode of instruction, it limits the learner's thinking, because learners are not able to comprehend what the teacher is talking about. I understand my own language, the teacher is talking to me in a different language. So you find that there is a disconnect, or there is a gap in the way teachers teach and in the way that that learners understand the context and content being taught in the class. It would also bring about boredom in class, by the way, because you're speaking a language that I don't understand. It does not so much resonate with me. Learners also drop out of school in a situation where a common language has not been adopted. A child finds no reason to come to school listening to a language that he or she does not understand. It also brings down performance, because like in the context of Uganda, we set our exams in English. In other refugee countries, English is an issue. Learners who come from the different countries meet English for the first time in Uganda. Now imagine a child facing an examination set in English. The child has got nothing to even talk about it. So the learners leave school, or if it's to sit such an examination, the performance is poor. The interest of learning actually goes away. So the child would find like, why should I even come to school and yet I don't understand anything at all?